Hey,
Welcome to
Canadians.
the lab, Canadian, right? I gotta watch what I'm gonna say, or Trudeau's gonna lock me up for 2 years. So
That's why. That's
wonderful.
why I gotta stop trying to bring my Canadians on. You realize MKUltra
Yeah, I
is
know.
the-
And guess
You're just
what?
baiting us to get into these
You see, someone
controversial
retweeted
topics.
something
We
Neil
will
in England.
liberate
There was a
you.
kid.
We will
Neil
liberate
deGrasse,
you.
hold on. Neil deGrasse came out today, or in the last 2 days, or something like that, and tried to claim that an XY, I think it is, does not make up the chromosome, doesn't make up a woman. So it's like you have
Why are you
TV's
listening to a
leading actor,
cosmologist?
scientist, wannabe scientist, more
An
like
astronomer.
no, not a.
He does. He's never
more
claimed
of
to
a
study biology.
wall. I would call him more of a gatekeeper, but
Yes.
that's my
Yeah.
opinion.
He doesn't
And-
really do any science anymore.
Yeah, and now he's trying to claim that no, chromosomes do not determine genetics, even though I'm pretty sure there's this thing called genetics where literally the sexual chromosome is what determines
No.
the sex of the animal, right? Of the species.
But it'd be like asking Joe Rogan about football. He doesn't know anything about football.
I guess.
I don't know. It
all
is
I
a
got
weird.
on that,
It is a
right?
weird idea because traditionally, I mean, that's the thing. We're always going to go back to. Well, traditionally, biologically, the feminine has
Genetically coded.
the non-mutagen DNA having XX. But what if we end up in a future where everyone's mutant, everyone has XY chromosomal changes, and the only way to breed is through transhumanist CRISPR?
Yeah.
That's not that unlikely.
we all
the way
become
would
stick
behave.
bugs?
believe in a history where we have like 5 or 6 other fuckholes that we can all have, and we just meet each other. We just punch each other.
This is
Just
your
get
dream?
off.
Well,
I
hold
don't
on,
endorse
Andreas.
violence
The
as a
scenario you
Canadian,
just
okay?
presented, guys. The scenario you just presented. If you have an aging population, let's say there's only 10 people left of this really specific tribe that speak this language,
Okay, but
and
we
they've
got
reached
8
their
billion,
breeding.
so I guess they're trying to
they're-
get rid of some of them from
they're no
reproducing.
longer
Is that what it is?
What? They're no longer of reproductive age, and so this idea of transhumanist or using technology to extract the remaining eggs from the women who are postmenopausal, and then somehow again extracting the male end of the equation as well. And instead of just cloning them, they're actually continuing to produce members of their lineage, even if they're not
What
being
about
carried inside
spiders?
those aging
The
members. of
spiders, the
society.
females eat the males, and then it's like amphibians. It's like if there's too many frogs, some of the females, some become males. So, what sort of dystopian future do you want, or all of them? Do you self-identify as a stick bug that's going to be able to reproduce asexually? Like, what sort of?
I didn't know this
mix
was a
are we gonna
conversation
go?
about what anyone wanted or thought was going to
But
happen. It's
I
just
honestly
like
think
examining
it's.
what is. You know?
I do think Bernie's point is relevant. That a
I've
lot
never
of
done
it
the
will
research
be.
myself, but
I do think a lot of it will be elective. We're moving towards a telescopic evolutionary track that's faster, exponentially faster than evolution.
and people that breed livestock, this isn't really even a conversation. You either acknowledge this about mammals and the way that their genitals act and like come out when they reproduce in mass numbers, and that there's going to be these oddities. They're called for goats, they're called free martins, and that's where the symbol of what is it, Satan, or as the Baphomet, as the goat, the androgynous goat, is because in a goat herder, again, they hear humans arguing about this stuff, and they're like, look, let me introduce you to this like member of my herd, and then you guys can like figure out what you really want to argue about. Like, look, this is a male goat, this is a female. Like, are we not arguing about emotions or like what we're trying to put our dick in anymore? Like, are we just like trying to examine scientifically what's going on? Or so anyways,
All of the above.
There's a good point that there are other choices, like the platypus is KW, ZW. The ZW chromosomal system is not XY. ZW.
Is that why the platypus lays eggs and has venom while being young?
I think there's a lot of things that we could always wonder
the
about.
platypus
The platypus
is definitely an example of what dinosaurs were like.
I'm afraid to pull up this picture because of the naked people.
Well, this is the world according to Wikipedia. That's what we're supposed to do in the liberal-run media, right? So Trudeau can't cancel me for this. What does Wikipedia say?
We were speaking about cancellation. I was going to talk about someone who did get sent to prison in England for 2 years for retweeting something. But just that last thought on the platypus. When you visit the Natural History Museum here at Harvard in Boston, there's a story on the wall about how the first time that the naturalists from Australia sent Harvard a sample of a platypus, they put everything else on display, put it in their books, and then they published a new edition without the platypus because they assumed that those tricksters over there were just pulling their chain. What do you mean? It lays eggs and it has fangs behind its armpits and a beak? Come on, guys. Like, even back in the 1800s, the scientists kind of had a good sense of humor, but turns out
here we are, Australia, and all their what were they called? The marsupials, right?
there was the emu war.
But also just the birds in general have ZW and Z. Was it Z and ZW? And so those ZW and ZZ. And the XY system is similar because we have a common ancestry, but we don't have a common ancestry as recently as when we developed our chromosomal reproductive systems, apparently.
Don't get me started on the muntjac. You guys know about the muntjac, right?
Y'all know about the muntjac, right?
It's a type
Which
of
one?
like
Which one?
It's a
muntjac
animal that can have either like 7 chromosome pairs or
which
like
one has 7?
45.
Which one has 23?
Is it because the eels are in the shape of DNA essentially?
The Reeves muntjac is interesting because it has the same amount of pairs of chromosomes as the humans do. But with muntjacs, they all have millions of different. There's muntjacs all over this place, and yet they look like humanoid deer, kind of. They're freaky.
Muntjac.
And they can interbreed.
We come from chimpanzees. We came from
Look at
these.
that freaking head, bro. It's like a jack. What's that weird?
Jackalope.
Jackalope cryptid.
Jackalope
right?
Confirmed.
Bro, yeah. And so they have everywhere from 7 chromosomes to 260 chromosomes, at least 120 pairs. And
they say all mammals
has the exact same number as us, right?
They say all mammals are warm-blooded, but there's a goat.
You get a human.
There's a goat that's
great interest in
cold-blooded.
evolutionary
It needs to bask
studies.
in the sun in order to heat its blood.
The Indian muntjac is the mammal
lizard.
with the lowest chromosome count, diploid number of 7, with female only 6. The Reeves muntjac has 46. And then, there's another muntjac that has 120 pairs, 123 pairs, something like that.
So speaking of because again, the opinions we're expressing online here, that's what conversations and words are for, is to kind of like feel out where the truth is together and maybe not even rely on achieving a consensus.
Truth is in
but
Canada.
In England, there was a guy who reposted, as a young gentleman who reposted something on the principle of, the person who posted this original post, which was a call to violence, to say, burn down this building or something like that.
I never endorse calls to violence.
And I'm not. Exactly. No, but so that person did, and it was a woman. She actually was. So he goes, watch Twitter. I'm going to repost this and not get punished. And then he proceeded to get punished as well for reposting it. So let that be a lesson, I guess.
Yeah. Dish it out.
At least, I guess, if you're from.
They will put you in jail. It is now the law. Watch what you.
And you have a society of people with adopting that as their ethos and principle by which they're operating. They're going to rat out their brother and their mother and their father for expressing the wrong political opinion online to because Tim Walz the vice president set up a hotline for snitches at one point, right? That was
well, in Canada now, you will get up to 2 years for pre-crime just for endorsing genocide. So do not claim you endorse genocide, even though we just ended residential schools, the government system and religious institutions.
They might be practicing it. They might be practicing it, but we don't condone it.
Hey, Bernie's leaning in. You got to listen. When Bernie's leaning in, he means it.
They might be practicing it, but we don't condone
on that one. So
that's the thing.
What?
They have USB rechargeable Bluetooth bras now.
What's powering the bras needed to be powered to be?
The phone will scan your chest and then tell you exactly what brands will fit you best.
I get the first chest enhancement part to mean enlarging. And if that's the case, then don't you think it's probably something to the effect of if you're on a date and you haven't paid your monthly trial, that all of a sudden your breasts deflate? You know what I mean? This is corporatism at its finest.
Would it be accurate to state that it became okay to just question what a woman is when a bunch of men started asking it, as opposed to what do women say? You never really hear what women say.
My theory is this. I tried getting one, but she was afraid she's going to get arrested. I think that
no, that's an interesting point. Okay, go ahead.
Women. My thought is again with the what have women done for me lately? Who are you is what you've done for me lately. So women have been for a long time housekeepers, slaves, exploited, in every way for sexual favors, for eye candy, right? So we have an idea, we have a predisposition of what we think women should do for us. Now, there's maybe reasons why we've exploited women and not as many men. There are a lot of men that have been doing the same things on the streets of San Francisco and New York, so I don't see why women are considered to be the this thing. But also transhumanism. There's going to be a point very soon, it's already happening, where you can clone, you can transhumanize your 3 partners. You have 6 of us together, put our DNA in a hat and make a child. This is the future. And pretty soon that might displace kind of like the vacuum cleaner, displace the broom. And
then some poor bloke who donates his body to science, his cock and balls is going to be on the wall with the microchip, and they're going to press a button, and the seed comes out. And that's all. I think that'll be a man in the future.
Maybe this is. I mean, this is a hot take. But maybe the real thing here, the real progression is women have been for the last 100 years prepared for the inevitable, not needing to be responsible for the jobs that they had to for evolution, and that pretty soon you're going to need something else to do with your time, whether you're focusing on your art or you're a manager at NBC. Maybe that is more valuable pretty soon, because we'll be able to clone millions of kids whenever we want to, and it'll just destroy the entire system.
There's this royal we that Andreas keeps. I mean, my psychologist would tell me to use I statements, so what Bernie was pointing out though is that it is a lot easier to catch like memeable moments or sound bites from a bunch of guys just spitballing and seeing what would be, just trying on a bunch of kind of jokes for size, working out some material about, hey, what is a woman? But the interesting thing is, right, women, I bet, argue just as much about what is a woman and end up crying a lot more of the time, because there's going to be women who say that aren't even part of any transgender debate, that just their fertility, there was an issue, or it was done to them without their permission or without their knowledge. And to say that, but then some people would stand pat and say, no, if you can't still have a child, you're not as much of a woman as me, or who knows.
Still a woman though. And
oftentimes it's like, does the man think the woman is more of a woman than women compete with each other a lot too, and I think it's
this is
how do we facilitate that conversation?
One of the Elon Musk South Parks where they actually had the actual Elon Musk playing himself again.
What? I haven't heard of these.
This is on season 20, was it 23, right? The Life on Mars. This is all about QAnon and this troll tracing program that can do emoji analysis to tell you.
Bernie, did they censor this in Canada?
Maybe. Like, I was just watching episode 20 or season 26, and it's like, this is 23. I don't think I've seen this.
You got to get back there. And he finds out that they're making men write jokes, and then they're milking them for semen that they can use for the keeping pregnant women on Mars. And this is the future of the Mars culture, right? This is what's coming. And he has to stop it.
It goes to Snoo.
Yeah. That's
Futurama did it first.
I think also
here's the thing is, if everyone's represented by a hieroglyph or a sigil, female of reproductive age would be different than just female who's either beyond reproductive age or before reproductive age, and men would get that reproductive element maybe attached to themselves into much later in life. And that's if you're kind of agglomerating all of them and making one giant sigil or hieroglyph out of what is a human. And I think when women have a conversation about what is a woman, much more of the conversation goes in the emotional direction about whether or not everyone that's in the conversation can still or wants to have kids or all that stuff.
Well, maybe it's because they're women and we're men, and there's actually something that makes us, women and men, and the fact that it's trying to be questioned, what is one or the other, is just ridiculous.
But
except for like, no, it's a little different, because let's say I want to
if you're writing a dialogue. Go ahead.
Before we do the screenwriting,
you came in hot.
I got really excited. I know. Like, when you think about an engineering project, you're like, wait, what do I have to do to like make my plant grow purple? I have to make sure that it's cold at this temperature. I don't know, an example. So if you were going to do the same thing, like, what do I have to do to make my body look like I'm a kid, right? I'm a little kid, and I want to look like this major. I'm a little kid. I want to be like Jesse Owens. I want to be a big muscle star. Well, you have to exercise every day. But you're a little German boy and you want to be black. Well, there's CRISPR, and the same thing with women. Like, you could become a big muscle man, but the things that go into making a little kid into a woman you could put those same chemicals into you. What are those chemicals? And they're starting to find. And I know this bothers people because they're like, "You're playing God" or whatever you think.
Well, then
you're
you can start putting in the stick bug things and the amphibian things, where it's like you can start regrowing arms and
The
producing
transmutata.
sexually.
I mean, what kind of idiot
Transmutata.
wouldn't want?
You saying
what
that
kind
like
of
a bad
idiot?
thing, or
What kind of idiot wouldn't want to have blood that could freeze like a guppy jellyfish? You know, one of those little the ice fish. You know, and come out of it. Like it'd be crazy not to do that. And if you want to be Amish, that's fine. But you have to understand, at the point that you're against transhumanism, you're basically Amish, right? You're basically the Amish were freaked out by technology. So are you. That's fine, and there's nothing wrong with
like
that.
this.
You wanna
Andreas
wait a
might be
generation.
actually 150 years old. That's how he knows all this shit. Is he's had like many lifetimes to study and learn and memorize it. And me and Bernie are just on our first time around, and so we're like
150, that's,
skeptical
like,
looking.
still on the
Andreas is
first,
like, no,
like,
I can see after
500,
another like 1,000 years, I
600.
could go amphibian. Like maybe, you know, it's
No, we're talking.
I could grow like a
Kingsless
third. I
age
mean, it might be
here.
useful, you know.
Why do
By
you
that
think I'm
time,
working
like,
on
the
the white
Neuralink
powder
would-
gold? It's to live for thousands of years eventually. It's just a matter that most of the material I've used so far isn't gold to make the powders out of the elements, right? Gold is kind of expensive, but
There's something
have
about
some.
enduring. There's something about changing. And hold on, I want to let Stefan tell your metaphor about the program. Was it the programmer? Was that what you say?
A programmer in
About transgenderism.
when I
if you're,
seeded
if you're a programmer and you're going to make a
no, I was saying if you're writing dialogue in a script.
Oh yeah.
As a man, one can, or a woman, you could sit there and write a dialogue for a female character, and then again it goes through revision, and you edit, you see how it looks to have a certain person say it, or this, that, or the other. But the idea that the male mind is somehow quarantined from female thinking, I mean, I guess that is probably true for some people, but I think that's called like having a complete lack of maybe like empathy, and it's like a case of like the tism a little bit, and like, you know, I've got my own elements of that. But
Alien Romulus is one of the best Disney princess movies, right? So Disney just put out this new Alien movie, and it's good. And if you think about it, it's a female that's lost her father. It's a Disney princess, right? Alien is the ultimate Disney princess now, right? It's the ultimate sign of femininity, the ultimate sign of Disney magic. Yeah, right?
So Ryan Reynolds had a line in the movie where he was a waiter, and one of the female characters like shows him her
It's
bush,
a
and he goes,
mother,
"What?"
right.
He goes, "Why is it so angry?" And the idea of like a face coming out of the jaws, and then it's, yeah, I mean, why is it so angry? Sorry.
There's something the idea that
our
we are
culture points at
transforming.
GM from a lot of other cultures, but there's
kind of a
different form
good
it.
question though. But it's like you got to rage out to be able to want to murder something and eat it, right? You just have to get so hungry, you're angry, and then you're just like, ah, and then, you know, the alien wants to eat you. That's why it's so angry.
If you asked an African guy, you know, about what made a man or a woman, and he was from his tribe, you know, like our buddy Ibiza, for
He'd
instance.
probably just point to the women and then point to the men. No,
I think he would. I think so. What Ibiza, I'd like to get Ibiza on this to actually confirm this, but I think you said this before.
See, they
It's
even
a-
line
it's
up
a-
there.
It's a
No, they
ritual.
hear we're really confused about it over here, and so they do these little demonstrations in case we're confused to the best of their ability. No, they'll
It's
put
a
on whatever
ritual.
costume.
It's a simple. No, it's you start out as a kid. If you go through the taboo, and that's the thing, we use the word taboo to be like, oh, you shouldn't do that. That's wrong. The taboo is something you have to do to become an adult, either a man or a woman. And then those are both like priestcrafts, right? To become a woman, you have to learn the trades
Right,
and the
so
culture and the class.
ritualistically, human tribal nature. It's you're a woman or a man, and then
That's because
like,
as a
the
child,
joke
they
is
train
just
you.
as funny though that it's like
So-
they're still even
No,
though
that's
it
grooming.
is-
That's
It
grooming.
is
They're
some
grooming.
people
They're
have-
grooming. That's grooming. They're
tradition.
grooming children. They're grooming children into being men or women.
And again,
then
some
they're gonna
people have
sex
6
and-
fingers.
right?
But
So what about the
without,
people
like-
that have 6 fingers? Your
So you
paradigm
need
doesn't
to-
fit
you-
them.
You
and the
need
way
to
that you're
have
speaking.
well
kind
because
of pretends
it's not
that they don't exist. But
because what it means to be a woman or a man means that you passed a test, and so there's a lot of men and women today. There's a lot of
But
grown
they don't
children.
have a third
We always talk
category.
about these. The third category is the uninitiated, and so you have all
Yeah,
of these
okay,
plebeians that have
uninitiated.
never become a man or never became a woman. Yeah, there's a lot of Americans like that. How many
So then
Americans
there
are
is
like
a
that? Probably most of
definition
them.
of a man and a woman, and then you just can't be initiated into one or the other if you become something else.
I mean, this sucks for a lot of people because they want to say I identify, but like if the rule in the ancient, let's lose common law here, going back, the tradition has been that the tribe initiates you into the class of being a man or woman. Then without the tribe saying you are, then you aren't. And so by legally forcing them to say so, you're breaking the rule that is what it is, a taboo. That you're creating a
But
new
at
taboo.
the same time, though, it's like without the contact to be able to get the puberty blockers to make them not a man or a woman, they're still going to grow up to be a man or a woman. They're just not going to be initiated into society as such.
Let's
It's
look at
not like they're gonna
Schwarzenegger's
come-
sons.
right? Like,
Let's look at Arnold Schwarzenegger's children, right? So let's see the pictures right there. There's where's the fat one?
I feel like
here's-
that's a sitcom.
This is the son raised by Arnold Schwarzenegger on
He
the
has
left.
another son too.
This is the son raised not by Arnold Schwarzenegger on the right. Now they're the same in a lot of ways. They've got both of the father's genetics, and you can see that. You can see he looks like a lot of Austrian guys I know, actually. Both of them do, actually.
He has another
this
son
is a
too.
wild
There's
case
another
study
son.
right here.
This is a wild case study, but it also shows you
Fascinating, actually.
what it means. What does it mean to be a man? Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to come from a very specific Janissarian line of Austrians that were soldiers, conscripted for thousands of years. There's an idea about being a man because if you can't,
Dad's
you don't.
boy, mama's boy.
You wouldn't
That's
survive.
the
You wouldn't
difference.
survive in a war against the Ottomans if you were not a man. Right? So you have to be a man. So they train you to be. And this becomes very important for generations until we get to the point of synthetic hormones. Let's be real about what Arnold Schwarzenegger is. He's not very different than the trans athletes, right? He's taking synthetic hormones to be more a man, right?
So, Andres, there's scenarios of collapse of society where the only members of certain peoples that have been persecuted that are left are the ones that are in the hospitals and the asylums. And so there could be kind of seen as the big dumb oaf who might have been fighters earlier in their life and had a bunch of concussions, but they're being kept under hospital conditions. And when all
100%.
shit goes haywire, they at least don't kill the hospital patients usually when you take over. And so then those are like the only members left of a certain lineage or something like that in certain situations. I don't know.
And I think
That
that's
might be
an
kinda out
important
there.
point. Like I'm really interested in looking at the Mennonites because the Amish have, like we said, they were scared of technology. They waited, and now there's dudes with trucks and Nokia flip phones. They're waiting, but they're still on the email and they're dealing with it. I think it's important to wait sometimes. If you want to be, if there's no reason to protect anything, if you don't have a family tradition, most people don't because their foundlings have been robbed generation after generation anyway. Maybe transhumanism mutation for the better. That's a thing. But if you're a Mennonite and you're like, hey, I have to protect this community or something like that, it is incredible because you have 7, 8, 13 kids, 140 grandkids, 1,300 to 2,600 great grandkids, 10,000 great grandkids.
Well,
This
and
is
follow
crazy.
it back up the line too. If you assume that you kind of have like guardian angels, then the idea that you don't have like 500 half cousin uncle things if you're part of that community, unless it's a
Right.
new trend that they started reproducing at those rates.
But that's the thing is there are people that are simultaneously to that they're having 1,000 grandkids. They're having a cat. There's so many people that are just gone. And granted, we've had this before. We've had sterility. We've had plagues. We've had religious piety. We've had castration. Eunuchs. We've had so many things. The eunuch thing is interesting when talking about transgenderism. How many men were castrated so they could serve the conquerors who stole their wives and raped them for their new bastard children? Right. This is very common culturally.
Well, we
right?
can
have
put
entire
10
classes
we can
of
put
third
10 men in a
genders.
room and kind of put them under the right conditions where they'll design missiles that will go kill people they have no idea where, but the right 10 people in the mix, you can probably get all the technology and but when it comes to growing good cannabis and distributing it in Massachusetts, apparently there's no way. The Cannabis Commission here doesn't even have a charter. It's expired. Again, I'm just kind of ranting here at this point. But
No, I mean it's
You
an
don't
important
really
point.
want it to be legal.
What? You don't want what to be illegal?
Pot. They don't really want it to be
knowledge
legal.
that you need to cure cannabis and like decarboxylate.
I think they've already won with hemp. The thing is, we all
Anyways.
know that hemp was the most important thing ever, and they figured
That's
out how
all
to
they sell
replace
now
it.
is hemp. It's modified hemp now, though. It's not
Yeah.
even weed anymore. The
Yeah,
hell,
that's-
dude.
That's the thing. They
Yeah.
won the war kind of against hemp. And the worst
Yuck.
part isn't even the
Yuck.
genetically modified hemp. The worst part of it is that hemp is a thing that you can use to make energy, anything. You can use it to make
Oil,
anything.
fiber.
You can use it to make it makes energy in anything. And instead what we're doing is we've inverted it. We're using all this energy to
Part of the water
create
cycle.
this thing which we're using to a lot of people sit around and do nothing. Right?
Okay, but
Which
so
is the most
corn-
evil, diabolical inversion of hemp. The actually
corn needs
scariest
a certain
possible thing.
gallons per day. You can flood your field, and certain areas look like if you flew over them at the right time of every day, you'd be like, oh look, there's an ocean with corn planted in it. But in reality, they're just flooding their fields at certain times, and it absorbs at a certain rate into the soil. And then the plants are these magical electrochemical beacons that pump all that water that was in liquid form into the air through some electrochemical exchange where they're belching out oxygen and water into the air, and it is part of, and so hemp does that even more efficiently than corn. And it's like it's seen as a bad thing because it's like a cash crop that is now in Massachusetts. The largest cash crop was cranberries at around $60 to $70 million a year. It is now $350 million as cannabis is the largest cash crop. But again, as far as I can tell, everyone accidentally is just growing souped up hemp, and it's disgusting. And they're trying to get their product to market within 5 days, which is nifty. But then like the herbs are referred to in the Bible even separately than the other plants that we have dominion over. And there's certain things you need to ferment them. It'd be like trying to sell kimchi and like getting like all the Korean people really excited about this new brand of kimchi, and you send it to them and it's not fermented, and they're like, this is just fucking cabbage and water. Like what is, and they're going, kimchi, it's supposed to be like fermented under very specific conditions where it's not going to make me sick, but it has this like, it's like a kombucha type thing,
Right, Brian.
And herb, I didn't realize that as a consumer growing up, and I now have much more appreciation for the amount of science that has to go into the post-harvest processing of this amazing agricultural product that is locally extinct as far as I can tell. And I hope that the seed bank somewhere has got, strain to reclone from, because the cannabis industry right now, before the bottom fell out because of just overproduction, but now everyone's being sold on terpenes, and it's like you could ask any real pothead and say, choose from these 10 kinds of weed, this one tastes the best, and you're like, that has absolutely nothing to do with why I would choose which weed I'm going to smoke. I'm not a fucking child looking for a flavored like burst of cherry versus grape. No, it's like, does this one have the active ingredient or not, and what range of
There's
it?
something pretty interesting about terpenes. I don't want to make this about that, but there's some, the quality versus the duration are changed. Duration might have to do with your biopharmacologically absorbable THC and delta 9, but there's in other chemicals as well. But the terpenes might actually
'cause there's an
affect
agonist.
the quality of that experience. Whatever. I mean, so do you guys want to
Andreas,
talk about?
you're science minded. And I don't mean to bore BurnEye and Catboy. Do you know what the concept of an agonist is when it comes to neuroreceptors?
Absolutely, yeah. And so a major
So
thing
they've
is
discovered,
playing
in my
with
opinion, and they're accidentally breeding it into certain
MAOIs.
things in certain percentages. It's a Narcan for THC, which in certain situations, I guess, is a good thing, other than the fact that it has a major effect on our vascular system.
You know what?
Yes.
Why I think that would be practical is because of the Czech spices, the JWHs or whatever. They have these weird research analog cannabis spices that were developed in the last 10 or 15 years. A lot of those can be extremely dangerous because they're
people go crazy
potent.
because they keep going back to smoke something that before for them had an effect that was measured. It was their way to either check in with reality, or for them was anxiolytic, and also had a lot of the people you see, major athletes taking this synthetic THC delta, and what's happening is all the receptors for the CB1 and CB2 receptors are being jammed up with all this not delta 9 THC. Okay, and
this is a good point that Nicholas brings up. Terpenes,
their liver is being taxed, and they're getting very sick, and they're going back for something that was a remedy, and it's actually then
live resin concentrates in the refrigerator will probably
so
do
careful.
So
And again, terpenes in and of themselves, you can have flavor, and like inhaling a lot of lemon terpenes makes you feel groggy after an hour anyways. And a lot of people would want no terpenes in their extracts, especially when some of the extracts that are sold, they taste like yeah, I don't know, like someone's loaded a whole bunch of cannabis or hemp extracted terpenes, but that's friggin' gross. Whoever had, I mean, it was a neat trend while it lasted, but I hope it goes away.
Yeah. I remember when JWH 018 came out, AM 678, this was really a problem in the Navy because the Navy had a lot of people that were, overseas. A lot of people didn't realize they're going to be in Iraq for so long. And all of a sudden, boom, out of the Czech Republic came out this JWH stuff. And there were naval officers dropping like flies, and they didn't realize how dangerous it was because, these are big guys. So they can take a lot of a powder. And it's a tiny little powder. And now, granted, they got to a point where they're using like vaporizers, but this is back in 2007, 2012, and they're just taking like powder and snorting it like it was cocaine or something. And they were dropping
outside of the psychological.
I was
Wait,
just
talking
thinking
about
about that literally
the
earlier
computer
today.
cleaner
I was like,
stuff?
whatever happened to that?
Hey, you're not a Luddite, you're a Scotch noble. Okay, Richie? We love you. I'll always love you.
Is this the computer cleaner stuff that you're talking
No,
about?
no. Computer cleaner stuff, like video cassette tape cleaner stuff. Oh my God, we're not talking about the Olympics again, are we? The 2007 Japanese Olympics was where the Japanese government prohibited all sorts of really novel drugs, research chemicals. And so beyond the tryptamines, there were the Alexander Shulgin.
Tryptamines.
Well, there's also tryptamine-rich phenethylamines. So, right, you can think about the Alexander Shulgin 2-5-dimethoxy-4 chlorophenolphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylp
OCI is the best from personal experience. But,
these are subjective things.
not a
Objectively, they were popular in Japan. Okay, and at a certain point, you can see the anime and the music just sort of like from Triple Nipple, which was a good band by the way with 3 Ps, to this Fish Story Japan, where they get sober in 2007 and beyond that, and there's just a cutoff period. And Japan gets really weird because before that, you have, like you said, video cassette tape cleaner stores which were selling these chemicals, and the government would come in and test these chemicals to make sure that they were pure because they didn't want people selling counterfeit VHS tape cleaner, especially when people were snorting it. And this led to Japan being really, really, really high for a while.
But before that, when they like the prohibition and they weren't high, and it's like I was actually want to talk on this myself just from personal experience. I was completely sober for the last week, so broke, couldn't even afford weed. But for sobriety, it was all good. Went to like my I've been off opiates for 5 years, but like went to like my every 3 month. I still meet with like the doctors and stuff like that, talk to them, whatnot. Went to the meeting, so I'd been like completely sober for a week before that, not even smoking weed. But it's like I became such an asshole. It's like you at least need some weed or something. Like I wasn't even drinking alcohol.
I think you're just being really. I think you're just Canadian, and so you were like, "No, I got to stay nice." That must have been the thing.
But yeah, I don't know. Now I've smoked some weed now, and now I'm chill again. I'm happy. I was like, "Fuck, I was a dick last week." But like,
yeah, I like how aggressive I get sober. I think people notice I'm way more aggressive when I'm like super sober. I try not to be, but as long as I don't drink coffee, because that's like way too much. I think.
But that's not completely sober. Then you got caffeine. Then
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, like I have to literally be like a 6-year-old level.
Mormon sober, all right. Actual Mormon sobriety here.
No, in that moment of reflection, again, it helps one work out the kinks in their personality. Sure. What I like to say is I tried walking around with a chip on my shoulder at one point. It just didn't really look good on me. That's what you find out. And having the moments where you do have access to cannabis and then realizing the things you rely on it for, it's like having a crystal in your pocket. Eventually, you don't really need that crystal in your pocket. And the beautiful thing about cannabinoids is that they're stored in your fat. So as soon as you stop eating and you change your metabolism and your body starts mobilizing your fat reserves, you get stoned again, my friends. I mean,
let me make a direct point to Richie for a second, because this is true, I think, but also I think you're better off not getting stoned and exercising and doing Kundalini. Like if you ever just do a lot of breathing exercises, you're way better.
That's the
you're probably better off.
Goal.
However, synthetics being the problems. I wanted to talk about this because my mother was a doctor, and I know a lot about biopharmacology being, evil. There's a lot of reasons why I would not want you to take pharmaceuticals or research chemicals in general, but I would still want. Richie, I really want you to watch this documentary, Dirty Pictures. It's a documentary with the DEA, all about Alexander Shulgin. Maybe you saw this one, and it talks about how he was like the ecstasy doctor, even though he really just rediscovered a molecule from 1898 and then synthesized it and then the DEA wouldn't let him do tests, so he tested it himself. Alexander Shulgin created thousands of different kinds of novel research chemicals, which are
Yeah.
not the problem.
I have
In
to
fact,
state, from an
just
alchemical point, from like the ancient alchemy, synthetic versus natural, right? Like the natural drugs that are like psychedelics and stuff. It's like, and from the tribal point of initiation into experiencing the psychedelic and then adulthood and all of this, as opposed to the drugs that are actual synthetics, like stronger versions of the natural chemicals. You're no longer using the spirit of the plant or that essence of that plant or that life form. It's this synthetic gateway crack between.
Yes, and when it comes to the real psychedelic
but when you look at Alexander
that is
Shulgin,
true.
Alexander
When it comes to
Shulgin
cannabis,
wasn't
it
a
actually recirculates in your
But
system.
hold on, Alexander Shulgin wasn't some crackhead. He was an alchemist who was 15 when he graduated from
I'm not
Harvard or
calling
Yale. No, I know. I'm just explaining though. When people think about chemistry, they're doing it from the perspective of not understanding it. And here's a guy who did work really hard on it, created things that pharmaceutical companies didn't want because they would immediately get you off of the pharmaceutical subscription, right? So they didn't want these things out there.
Oh, this
which
guy's
is
good
why
guy.
this is the thing. And the pharmaceutical companies are like, wait, this is going to be a generic, trademark free in the public domain. Everyone's going to have access to these things. This is the major reason why he was silenced. And it's important to know he's also a member of the Bohemian Club, and he was kept safe because a lot of these research chemicals were kept kind of in the discreet light.
The Bohemians could use them.
And it's a guy like him, though, when it comes to something
100%.
like quinine, that where it was before it was only harvested from the bark of a tree, and you couldn't have humanitarian, let alone army forces, mobilized without a stock of quinine in their mess kits and stuff, or in their med kits, because they were going into areas that had malaria. So eventually they learned to synthesize. They first had to isolate the active ingredient and do experiments to figure out what was and then find a way to synthesize it from scratch in the lab. And those are the kinds of things where you can
how against aspirin
on the drum of all natural all you want, but when they get to that level, that's some far out shit.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting when I saw, so in school I used to look at generic aspirin versus Genentech aspirin under a microscope, and it blew my mind because the crystal particles are so different, and the tiny perfection of the little Genentech aspirin molecules sputtered out across that are easily solutable in your bloodstream, way better than these generic ones. And I learned that there are really important trade secrets.
Oftentimes we think we've replicated it exactly, but in reality, plant derived
giant,
is probably
multicolored flakes and things like that. You can do a lot with plants. And let's think about ayahuasca that can give you stomach problems. Well, tryptamines that have been extracted don't give you the same guttural stomach problems. The lycopene reaction isn't there, right? So there's a lot of reasons why. Let's say you're a young Turk and you can handle it. It doesn't matter. Let's say you're in a hospital bed and you have dementia, and they find that giving you extreme doses of nootropic serotonin can help your brain re-register and wire the same as ibogaine, but you can't physically process that because it could kill you, right? So there's reasons why these medicines are important to study, and these are the same reasons why they're not studied, and why instead these other things are pushed on us, which are harmful often. That's my pitch.
Yeah.
It's the opiate of the masses. On one hand, someone was saying that
stop giving opiates to the masses. Personal test.
Well, no, but so originally opiates were seen as like a life hack, and the person could do repetitive work, and it was seen as an unfair work advantage if they had access to opiates. But that comes with responsible use, obviously, in certain contexts. And again, this is back when we're talking about like 30,000 years ago when people were using these substances. And I would also like to back up Bernie's things. Kids, do not try drugs. Drugs are not for trying, and in general, or even adults. Don't do drugs. You know?
What is the Badlands Guardian? I wanted to let Bernie show us a little bit of the continued research of the new faces of the Badlands in Canada. As some of you might know, there's some freaking faces in the Badlands of Canada, and we're going to zoom in on some of the spots that Bernie's visited.
Oh God, here's the right picture. There we go.
Now, like, if you guys love pareidolia, then you'll love the Badlands. Having said that, I don't know if I could use pareidolia as enough of an excuse to explain this, and we've been doing it for a while. It's pretty interesting. So
I'm going back down in a couple weeks' time. I got some new batteries for my drone, so I'm going to get drone footage, try to get better angles of all of the terraces that I've found on the faces. But so this is like the main face right there, and then supposedly there's this face there, and then this Olmec face here.
I mean,
and
these
then
are the
potentially this
Nazca
face
lines of
there.
Canada. There's a lot going on.
They-
here.
they
I mean, a
are.
lot of people.
And again, I
a lot
feel
of
like
people thought the
Andreas,
Nazca lines
those were kind of
paradolic.
fighting words. And Bernie, as like your unofficial PR
Another
agent or
face
lawyer,
there, another
as
face
you know,
there.
they said in Fear and Loathing, as your lawyer, anytime someone accuses you of pareidolia, you have to say, yeah, that's what I kind of thought too. And so I drove there, and it turns out they're all made of terraces, like as far
That's
as
the
the eye can
Exactly.
see. And then it's
Right.
like, okay, all right.
No, we like to
Okay.
give
All
people
right.
the option. We like to give people the option to be like, hey, look, novelly
It
speaking,
could
this
be
could
all
just be
pareidolia,
whatever.
but like, so
But so
on
could,
the other
like, the
side of the
pyramids then.
road, I see this now as a big face. I never really noticed this one before, but it kind of seems like a face. Pardon my drawing, because I'm splitting it in two. Because I've always claimed that this guy is like a Moai face, and they're essentially like these native totems, right, and masks. And then this guy here being that long-headed, big-nosed bird man that you see on Easter Island depicted so much. But then that kind of looks like a lion or a sugar skull or something to me. Maybe it is pareidolia, but how
That's
many?
Homer Simpson. What do you
Right? Like it's a face of something.
When
it
you
is.
start, so the thing with
And then-
pareidolia is when you got one thing, it's all right. But when you have a bunch of things, eventually, especially considering the Nazca lines, the likelihood of humans being there and of interacting to make this goes up. And the fact that there's so many of them, that's just more probability that there's something working on that. Granted, there
And
could
what's the
easily be
implication, though?
explanations.
Because
Well,
no one's
there's a
ever heard
culture-
of this
There's a
before.
why are the Nazca lines?
When were there enough people to do this? And take out the why. Take out the
That's
why.
why
Let's just say
I've got
it's a
Randall
when did
Carlson
this happen?
interested in this. And after I go back this next time, I'm in talks with him. So hopefully I'll actually be able to get Randall Carlson to.
You need to get
see what
LiDAR,
he
man,
says on it,
right?
because
Dude, if you do-
definitely
what about doing
LiDAR
LiDAR
needs
up
to
there?
be done. But so first I'm going down with the drones to make sure that every single one of those hills is covered in those same terraces, and also to try to get the footage of the actual megalithic geoglyph lines that Arthur Ferrum claims to have found. If you see my presentations where
Yep.
he has these geoglyph radios and they literally connect to the Peruvian lines,
Kind
the
of map out
Nazca lines.
distances to all
And that's
these
actually
other-
how he found out about the Medicine Hat Badland Guardians, was from the geoglyphs in the Nazca lines directly connecting to these Medicine Hat faces. So it's like it would be.
What
this
about gold
giant,
detection?
huge-
Can you detect gold from
Gold.
altitude as well? Because again, if
that's
this is
some
really
classified
virgin
technology.
archaeology, that's going to be the thing that gets plundered first, and so you have to go after it to protect it and then publish it. But then by publishing it, you're going to get more plunders. So, I
Stop
mean, I don't know.
mentioning gold around these barren hills, okay? Jeez, what are you
So
talking
you got to get
about?
LiDAR and somehow electro. What kind of Andreas would know what tech you use to look for gold from
There's
space?
deep ground
And I'm not
penetrating
telling.
imaging.
True.
We're about 2 hours
We will
deep. Is there
talk
anything
off
else?
there before I go down.
Is there anything else you want to make sure we cover, Capo agents, or something that you're missing here?
No, I did want to talk about movies for a second. I did want to talk about the very good movie I saw a few weeks ago, The Night of the Comet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the town, the whole town, is that the one?
Well, no, it's everyone's turn to red dust, and it's like a
The 1984
super
one, right?
budget zombie movie.
Yeah.
But it was part of those like great like weird 1980s films
Totally.
where everyone takes everything lighthearted. What was it? The movie Liquid Sky.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite movies of all time is Liquid Sky.
Yeah, she gets like raped multiple times and she doesn't care.
Well, yeah, she's
Just,
a
like, walks
supermodel
up, she
on
doesn't, like,
heroin
fucking
in
care,
New
she's
York.
like-
What do you think she's gonna? She's obviously been through it
I
before.
don't know if I've seen that. My
You've never
God.
seen Liquid Sky?
No, but it's
No.
like it's this
Liquid
1980s
Sky
thing,
made me.
like-
Liquid Sky made me who I am today. I don't know what else to tell you. That's one of the most important movies you could ever watch. Liquid Sky. It is a beautiful, true story about light beings that travel down to take over heroin chic models so that they can do drugs in their bodies, and they don't even realize all the suffering that humans have been through. And it's a weird kind of What do you
Well,
can
it's just
kind of tie it to Twelfth Night? No.
it's
What's the one?
very
What's the Shakespearean
weird.
play?
And it's
About the
it,
fairies and Puck. What's it called? Not Twelfth Night.
the whole
Midsummer
movie
Night's Eve. It's like midnight. It's Midsummer Night's Dream, but it's about light beings and heroin chic aliens.
just like, all right, we want that body, we want that adrenochrome, we're going to kill that person.
No, they need the body because light beings cannot feel. They need the body to take the heroin. You cannot.
I don't
feel
know.
without
I
it.
think they were killed like 4 or 5 of those people.
Or over the thousands of generations and thousands of millennia that light beings have been coming down and using these Olympian lesbian chic models since the beginning of time.
What were they doing with the bodies afterwards? The only one I felt like could honestly, like, they felt bad for was her.
Yeah. Well, but that's happened before. That's the thing. It's like the Predator series.
Yeah, but like, yeah,
Are we
but they're still
talking
gone.
greys,
Assuming they're not. I'm assuming they're
reptilians? What
dead.
sort of assholes are possessing us to do drugs?
I'm famous in Berlin, baby. They love me in Berlin, baby.
It's like she's never been there. It's like,
my father's a rich man who can make you famous. You need to watch this movie if you haven't seen Liquid Sky.
She's just being hit on. Like some guy's like making fun of her. Like, are you a dyke? Are you a lesbian? Feel my cock on your like butt. She's like, ew, go away. And she just slaps him like, just stop.
Yeah, because she's 6'8" and from Connecticut. Again with the
It's
whole.
just like, it's
you got to
so
understand
tough.
these kinds of people, right? Like,
How
they're
many
real.
lesbians would have go to a trauma circle just for one guy who hit on them?
You know what the world was like back when people were tougher?
Yeah.
Everybody was tougher. Your mom was tougher. Your sister was tougher too. It wasn't just.
I know.
All right, so I got one last thing I do want to talk about, and it's the potential ELF frequency waves or technology and these rumors of like military satellites beaming down frequencies on parts of the world, you know, sometimes enraging, sometimes depressing. And a lot of people have been depressed and should be raged lately. So
That's
I'm
true.
going to be delving more into that, going through
the cannabis
Eric
went bad.
Hecker's
Of
work
course, everyone's
and
it's been
Dutch
years now,
Sense's work.
I do think that there's something to this, that frequencies
Can't
pick
even get
up
that
on
right.
blood. Frequencies picking up on blood types could be used to channel certain reactions in states. We've talked about HARP and this idea of the laugh track. But if you've still got some frequencies that work, I mean, the idea of active denial resistance systems, right? ADS, we've talked about active denial.
I gotta get the first guy I ever interviewed back on, and shout out
Well,
to
it's
Rick,
part of 5G
he
now, is
gave
the
me
beaming.
some coil schematics that he said he designed while in the military investigative research department, and that they were playing with different frequencies and different coil shapes and different metal mixtures for the coils, and that they actually were able to get the famous legendary brown note. Everyone in the lab shat themselves when they put certain frequency through, and that they were also doing wild things with solfeggios. So yeah, I gotta get back on that. And he's the one that originally mentioned the frequencies and the satellites to me. If you haven't seen that interview, it's quite fascinating. But
okay, wait. Actually, do you know something about that? Is that in the 1960s, there would be times that people would, the radars on like capital ships or on aircraft carriers, they would fall while they were turned on, and everyone on the ship would be blasted by a second of the radar just shooting at them. And a lot of these guys would end up just hemorrhaging, shitting themselves, puking. A few of them even got stomach cancer from it.
Yeah, that's more radiation causing that one, and that actually goes into Dutch's work and Eric Hecker's.
No, it's the same idea. Radio waves
Okay.
hitting your body. Hitting your body. We're not talking about alpha, beta, or gamma radiation.
So, being cognizant of the fact that Andreas did call attention to we were past the 2-hour mark. I was just hoping to get him to look up one thing for the pseudo archaeology community that I consider myself a part of joyously. But there's something called Jeju Stone Park. Yeah, if you can put that into something that pronounces Hindi. So I dropped a name, and there's a news article I can drop in as well, and it's about this guy's praying for peace, but his name is like 40 consonants long, and I just think it's very.
So you're gonna read it off to us, his 40 consonant name in prayer for world peace to end this. Is that correct?
Well, I don't think is I can't pull it
Sri
off.
Shankara
I'd really
Via
just see.
Yendra Saraswati Swamingal. Yeah, that's all right. That's not so hard.
Okay.
Sri Shankara Via Yendra Saraswati Swamingal.
Oh boy. My neurolinguistic processing is not up to
Ramalama
speed.
ding dong. Ah! Okay, well, I love you all. I hope that you
What
guys...
is a good movie to watch tonight?
Great movie to watch tonight.
The one you mentioned, Aiden.
I watched the Jerky Boys the other day. Hey, Jerky. It was the first prank callers.
Have you seen Surf Nazis Must Die?
I heard of it.
No, but that's a message I could probably agree with to end with. So why not? Let's look it up.
Surf
God
Nazis
bless
Must
you all.
Die,
That boy would like the
1987.
Jerky
The
Boys,
beaches
actually.
become battlefields. I got 2 movie recommends for you. This is the type 2 diabetes movie. So basically, Nazis have taken over California. Nazis run the beach, the Yakuza in the San Francisco area. Who can stop them? Well, Leroy's mama. She's big, she's bad. She's the only one who can stop. And there she is. Leroy's mama is going to stop them. So, you better watch this
It's
movie.
a black woman.
Hey,
that's
shout
gonna-
out Eric Hecker. Actually, watch it in the chat right now.
One of my
Xirtus,
favorite
If you
films.
haven't had Eric on, you definitely should.
Oh, yeah?
His adventures in South, the Antarctic, just south.
Where's his
pole.
channel here?
He's joining off of my channel there.
I'm still waiting for the Eric Dubai episode. What's
this
going
it?
on?
There you go.
Eric.
Yeah,
Hey,
there you go.
Eric. Eric, you sound cool. We love to talk about
We'll
active
do that.
denial systems and the Grateful
Eric's
Dead.
extremely smart. Been through crazy stuff. If you haven't heard his story, he's part of Stephen Greer's last disclosure at Washington, and he's probably like, it's just wild. So we'll have to get him on.
Eric
Yeah,
J. Hecker, let's do a show soon.
He's on Stephen Greer. Well, actually, I would like to fuck with him.
Eric has nothing to do with Steven, though. He's just that he was down in Antarctica,
Okay.
spent a year there, and the
If-
shit he found and discovered is just wild.
If
to
I
check
was
out.
gonna, all right, Hecker,
He's
let's do
also
a show.
sub, worked in the Navy, all sorts of stuff.
Let's get Bernie and you and me to sign that together. If you guys are gonna watch one movie though, ever again, and you don't have time to watch Surf Nazis Must Die, what you're gonna do for me is you're gonna watch my favorite movie ever made besides like Metropolis, Wild in the Streets, 1968. This is a movie I both sympathize, relate, identify, fantasize, romanticize. This is my favorite movie, and it's about 1968 when the boomers were the high populace of 51%, 52% of the population was under the age of 25, and if they were, going to allow the voting age to drop, at the time the voting age was 21. And they were putting people off to death.
Sorry, I just
People were
have to
going
correct
to
myself.
war.
Aiden
People were
was
going to war at
absolutely
17.
right.
Wow,
It's
they
high
couldn't drink.
energy radiation from the
or
waves,
vote,
but
but they were
definitely
could be
not
given-
atomic radiation. Definitely.
Right. So the idea that there's 21 was the age to vote, but 17 you could be conscripted for service. So there are people going off
Wow.
to die in the war who couldn't vote in their country. And people were saying, hey, well, we should probably lower the voting age to be in parity with the age going off to war. And this movie says, screw that, 14. Let's make the age 14. And not just 14 and ready, 14 or fight. We'll fight for the right to vote and to run for president and to run offices at 14. Complete suffrage at 14.
Oh,
which
wow,
would be
that's insane.
well, it's also
less
ancient.
time to be
it's an
corrupt,
ancient.
man.
If you think about it, through
Let's
your bar
just
mitzvah and bat
prevent
mitzvah.
wars from getting to the point where people have to.
Children of the
conscript their
corn, Bernie.
14-year-olds.
Children of the corn. I want you guys to watch Wild in the Streets.
I think
This
the
is the
real
most
answer
important
is
movie
that
ever
we
made.
shouldn't send our young people away to fight in wars either way.
Or send anyone away to fight.
But
in
it's
war.
interesting
Well,
to make
then
the conversation.
how
about
are you
what
gonna
age
get
is
them
good
out
to
of the
vote on,
house? How are you gonna get them
That-
out of
that
the
really- I
house?
don't-
War's the best
That's
way to
your
get kids
challenge.
out of the house.
Guys, America, we've fallen for this many times where we hollow out all of our towns.
I'm just
of all
an
the
innocent
good
Canadian.
people that are responsible, and they all get conscripted.
You're
to
bringing the invaders to yourself, Canada.
Hey,
You
we're
watch
afraid of
Children of
you
the Corn
invading
live?
us just because we painted your White House sometime, or maybe I don't know, burn it down.
Is there- is there a
We're
live
definitely
Children of the
gonna
Corn
do a military
musical?
intervention in Canada? Mark my
If not,
words.
that-
You do not.
You
condone
guys
that
can
thing.
have Quebec, all
Sounds
right?
like
We're
okay.
just from the West here. We're just going to volunteer Quebec for you.
I'll take it.
Canada is a country. Waves of people came to this country, were welcomed by the folks who've lived here for millennia, the First Nation. And built this society with waves of people fleeing religious persecution, fleeing tyranny, fleeing to try and build a better life for themselves here than they had back home. Whether it's folks fleeing from world wars or fleeing from civil wars, these people always want the same thing: to be able to live in peace, to raise their families, create a better future for themselves and their communities. And that is what generations created this extraordinary diverse society we have. Now, Canada remains one of the only countries in the world where citizens are, by and large, positively inclined. And one of the reasons we are that way is because Canadians have confidence in our